We had some winners and we had some losers last week. The Florida Gators season looks like they're in trouble after losing head coach Jim McElwain. Was it the right decision? Who's going to be the next head coach? No one knows. FSU also had a rough game, only scoring 3 points. It's not looking good for Florida programs, but for the first time this year in RedZone and EndZone, we bring you 5 top 25 matchups. Thanks for joining. I'm Janae Muchmore.
And I'm Griffin Parkrose.
The Bedlam rivalry continues this year as number 8 Oklahoma takes on number 11 Oklahoma State. Now, I looked up the definition of Bedlam earlier today, and it actually means a scene of uproar or confusion, which is kind of interesting considering how much Oklahoma has owned this rivalry.
Yeah, this rivalry has really been pretty mundane and been almost anything but Bedlam. Except for, a couple of those first meetings when Oklahoma won 75-0. That's just kind of Bedlam for everyone in the stands.
It could definitely be Bedlam this year. Both teams are ranked. There's a lot of pressure on this game. Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? Who's going to possibly get a bid for the playoffs?
Yeah, and this battle for Oklahoma has a lot to do with recruiting as well. There's a lot of recruiting that goes on in that, North Texas, all of Oklahoma region. There's a lot of 4- and 5-star recruits there that are going to be looking at this game specifically. With a lot of the Texas programs being down, it's going to be interesting to see if a lot of those recruits may change their mind to whoever wins this game. This rivalry has been going on for 113 years, and it wasn't until the 35th meeting between these two teams that Oklahoma State was finally able to score more than 14 points in a game, which when you take a look back and you see that Oklahoma is scoring 75 points against them, 50 points against them, 35 points against them consistently in an era where they didn't pass the ball. That's a little embarrassing for a rival. They are a pretty dominant offense. Baker Mayfield has been, especially later in the season and in that Ohio State game specifically, he's lived up to the expectations, something that other quarterbacks haven't been able to do so far this year. He's limited interceptions and made the big plays when he's needed to. He's a key leader on this team. He's been in this rivalry before. He knows what it's like. Going to Stillwater is never easy for any team, but having someone on your team who's been there, done that, it's going to help them a lot. It helped them a lot in their win against Texas at their neutral site game, and I think it's going to come into play here again with that senior leadership.
Mason Rudolph should be back in full swing after a minor shoulder injury last week against West Virginia. He's got 2,866 passing yards with 22 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. This offense averages 370 passing yards per game, which is the equivalent of Oklahoma's passing yards. Then you have a defense. In a high-scoring game, which seems to be the case for all those Western teams, defense is always going to prevail, and that was the case last week. Now, West Virginia snuck away with 39 points, but 14 of those was not the defense's fault here, coming from a blocked punt return and an interception. So now you look at the 25 points allowed by this defense, and I'm not saying it's the strong suit behind the Cowboys, but listen to this. They matched up with a high-scoring offense that gained an average of 540 offensive yards prior to this game, and you hold them to 347 yards. That's an incredible effort on the defensive side of the ball, one that's going to be huge in this game against Oklahoma. And then the tempo of the game. It's not easy to command control of a game, but Oklahoma State definitely ran the tempo last week. They possessed the ball for 37 minutes. That's almost 66% of the game, which is huge. And that is something these Cowboys have struggled with, in particular this season, normally only holding the ball for an average of 28 minutes and 39 seconds. In a big game like this, it's critical that time is on their side.
Yeah, and last week was definitely the anomaly, as you said. Oklahoma's been possessing the ball for almost 32 minutes every game. So it looks like they have a little more success possessing the ball and really controlling the flow of the game. There was a lot of costly mistakes for this Oklahoma State team. They gave away the ball to West Virginia 4 times. 2 of those, you said. It's hard to stop a team when you're giving them that type of field position, drive in and drive out. They do have a possible injury to Mason Rudolph, but he does have a possible injury to his throwing shoulder on his right arm. That's something that's going to be really interesting to look at. Even if it's not, or even if it is 100%, that possible hit in confidence that most quarterbacks take when they have a shoulder injury, especially to their throwing shoulder, on those deep passes, overcompensating just a little bit, throwing just a little faster than you normally want to because you don't want to re-injure it and get hit again. Those are things to really keep an eye on, especially early in this game while he's still getting used to the game flow and turnovers. They just have a ton of them. They're ranked 103rd in turnovers lost this year with 16. They have 10 fumbles and 6 interceptions. So it's not like it's Mason Rudolph's fault for all of these turnovers. They're just giving it up most of the time. They're dropping balls, they're getting stripped, and a lot of those are just effort plays that should be fixed, especially at this point in the season.
Well, turnovers may not necessarily be an issue for Oklahoma, but they do give up a lot of sacks. Every 1 in 20 plays results in a sack for Oklahoma. The offensive line just needs to tighten up and protect their quarterback. Then you have the secondary for Oklahoma. They allow 100 more passing yards at an average of 239 yards than they do rushing. Although they have seen a top 5 offense this year, they have yet to see one who can pass as effectively as Oklahoma State, and that could mean trouble.
These secondaries are really going to be challenged. Oklahoma State last week with Will Grier in West Virginia. Oklahoma, they haven't really experienced that high-powered passing offense just yet, except for early on with Barrett at Ohio State, but he wasn't the same quarterback that he is now. He's improved a lot. My player to watch is a defensive player, Ogbonia Okoronkwo. He's leading the Big 12 with sacks. He has 7 sacks on the year, and he also adds an impressive 13 tackles for loss, which is second in the Big 12. He's a master of the strip sack. He has 3 forced fumbles on the year, which is 8th in the country. If Oklahoma has any hopes of winning this game and wants to slow down this passing offense of Mason Rudolph, they're going to have to get in the backfield, and they're going to have to make him uncomfortable.
I've got a dynamic duo that teams up perfectly for the Oklahoma State offense, and those are the 2 you're going to want to watch out for. Mason Rudolph and James Washington lead this offense. Oklahoma's secondary is much worse than the rushing defense, so these 2 are going to play a critical role in this game. Washington has already hit the 1,000-yard mark with an average of 22 yards per reception and 8 touchdowns. And Rudolph just might hit his 3,000-yard mark this weekend.
Yeah, they're extremely explosive. That duo specifically is one of the top duos we've seen in recent college football history.
Oklahoma State, I know that there's a possible injury in Mason Rudolph. He returned to the game last week, though. I think he's doing fine. They were a little too close to West Virginia than I think they wanted to be. But I think they're going to use that and this huge rivalry momentum and excitement that they get, and they're going to come in and make some noise.
I'm a strong believer in history. Oklahoma has really dominated the series overall, but it's some of those really weak Oklahoma State teams that have come back and really surprised Oklahoma. So it'll be interesting to see if, Oklahoma State's able to create some bedlam, especially in that college football playoff picture.
Well, the time is now for Oklahoma State. Will they capitalize on it?
That's the question.
Well, if you enjoyed this game preview, we have 4 other top 25 matchups for Week 10. They're along the right side of your screen. Be sure to check them out. I'm Janae Muchmore.
And I'm Griffin Parkrose.
Thanks for watching RedZone to EndZone, and have a great weekend.